Okay, and there we go. First, thank you for showing up. I have never hosted my own going away party before. So this is a brand new thing for me. And the idea for it sort of came from the fact that I've been working remotely for the last 2 years. It's hard to have an office Christmas party when you work by yourself. But I thought we sort of did this last year at Christmas. Several of us got together online and were able to have some fun and games. So I thought, what the heck? I'll throw an office party and see who would like to join. And then circumstances changed, and I will be leaving my job at the jail on January 1st. So I thought, what the heck? I haven't had a goodbye party in a very long time, so I'll throw one. So here it is, Jim's farewell, so long, goodbye party. And I invited coworkers, fellow poets, friends, and I'm delighted to see all of you here. I want to give you a little background. I'm sort of going to do my own eulogy and obituary here. I started in nursing at the ripe age of 30 and had to really fight to get accepted into the nursing program where I went to school. Um, who knows why? Anyway, I got in. I got an associate degree in nursing and off I went. And it's been about 42 years. It's been a long, fun, and definitely winding road to get where I am. But the things that led me to work in the jail were kind of interesting. In addition to nursing, I also had a strong interest in IT. And so I was doing software, hardware, upgrades, repairs, installations as a side job while I was nursing. And as a result of that, at the hospital where I was working, I got into a conversation with the CEO, and we did not have at that time an intranet. And he asked me if I would like to work in IT and develop an intranet, with the idea being that the healthcare personnel needed a lot of IT support and access to information. So I said, sure, why not? And that's been kind of my motto with everything I've done. Sure, why not? So I went to work in IT. Because of the amount of typing I did, I developed tendonitis in my left elbow, then in my right elbow. Got them cleared up, got tendonitis in my left elbow again, got that cleared up. But eventually, things in IT changed to the point where that wasn't where I needed to be, and I wanted to be back in clinical, so I went back to ICU. And after about a year of being in ICU, I was trying to turn a large patient who was on a ventilator and having all of the problems that come from being on a ventilator. And I managed to tear the tendon in my left elbow, requiring surgery. So I did the surgery. I was put on modified duty. I helped my ICU manager with a lot of her IT questions and application development and so on. And somewhat out of the blue, I was called into a meeting with my manager, HR, and I was informed I no longer had a job in ICU because I hadn't recovered sufficiently and I had used up all of my allotted modified duty. I was stunned and I said, okay. And directly to the head of HR, with whom I had been friends for several years, will there be some assistance finding another job within the organization? And the response was, the jobs are posted on the job board in the hall. And I said, oh my gosh, that was the biggest dismissal I think I've ever had in my life. So I walked away from that. And within just a few months, I got a letter in the mail. In the mail, mind you, that was a mass mailing targeted to RNs in my area, Solano County, looking for a facility coordinator for juvenile hall. And I said, I don't even know what that means. But I went and talked to the people who were hiring. And it turned out to be California Forensic Medical Group, which has morphed over the last 20 years into what is now WellPath. But at the time that I was interviewing for the facility coordinator, it basically meant I was the charge nurse at juvenile home. That's what it was. While I was interviewing for that, the person who was director of nursing decided he'd had enough of being director of nursing and took the job that I was applying for. So the person above him looked at me and said, "Would you be interested in being director of nursing, DON?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" So I did. It took me about 18 months, a little, maybe 20 months to figure out that that's not what I wanted to do with my life. Management wasn't my thing. So I went back to being a staff nurse. And not too long after that, was asked if I would go to a neighboring county, which is Yolo County, and some of my work colleagues will recognize that, to cover for a physician assistant who was out on medical leave. And at the time, we had a really robust set of standardized procedures for RNs. And I said, I can do that. So I went and I did it. I was so energized by doing primary care that I decided after 30 years to get a master's degree and become a nurse practitioner. So I did. Took me a couple of years working modified full time and going to school evenings and driving to Sacramento for classes, but I did it. And I was really thrilled with that. So I already was offered a position in the Solano County Jail as an NP as soon as I graduated. So that was great. A few years of that, and the company offered nurse practitioners who were interested that they would pay for a course to prepare us to provide mental health care and medication management within the context of correctional setting. And I said, sure, why not? So I did that, but there wasn't a position open immediately. So I continued to do the medical NP, mixing some psych stuff in with it, pretty much like a primary care doctor would do, treating minor episodes of depression and anxiety and so on, because I was qualified at that point to do it. And then the full-time position for Psych NP opened up and I took that. So that lasted a couple of years, about 3 years. And things were not working as well as I'd hoped. And my wages were kind of flat. And I was looking at the community and thinking, I can do better. So I started looking, and when I told the people up the chain from me that I was seriously thinking of leaving, they said, well, hold on a minute. And within 24 hours, I had been connected with the people to hire me to work with a new program called Early Access and Stabilization Services, which is a really, really cool thing, in my opinion, because it gets people who have been declared by the courts to be incompetent to stand trial into a program of being stabilized on medication, started on some training and therapy to restore them to competence so they can get on with their legal stuff. That took care of a lot of things for the Department of State hospitals, especially in terms of the backlog they had of over 2,000 people who were waiting. So I got involved with that and it worked tremendously well. But this last month, there's some restructuring done. So my specific position, along with a few others, will come to an end on January 1st. So I don't know yet if I'm technically going to retire, if I'm going to be able to find something comparable. But for right now, as far as Solano County Jails go, this is my adios, goodbye to you. So that's a long-winded version of how I got to where I am today. But I do not regret for a moment having gotten into working at the jail. I have had a lot of fun experiences, serious experiences. I've made good friends, and I am leaving with the knowledge, absolute knowledge, that I did some good. And I would like to share 3 quick stories with you just to illustrate how those things have gone. The first story is just what happens to people after jail. Excuse me. So I've been keeping a running journal of sorts of collecting stories and things that I thought were important. So I was out shopping at a local discount store, Walmart. And when I was at the check stand, someone next over in the next check stand over said, "Hi, Jim." And I looked around and it was the cashier at the next check stand. And she said, "Do you remember me?" Well, of course I did. It was someone I'd treated several times in jail. And I said, "Yes, how are you doing?" I didn't think it appropriate to mention where I knew her from. But she pointed at her name tag and she said, "I'm working. I have a steady job." She was really happy for me to see that she was making good choices. And it was interesting to me because we had never had discussions, she and I, about what do you do after jail? How do you know you're succeeding? How would she even have remembered me or know that I care? But obviously, something in our interactions um, said to her that, yeah, I do care, and it mattered that she saw me seeing her make good choices. That is one of the things that really tickles me. And I've seen a lot of my former patients in the community here. And in general, they remember me with kindness. Can never argue with that. The second one, I'm going to have to share the screen with this because I would normally say, let me show you the actual sick call slip. And for those of you who don't work, haven't ever worked in a jail, just a quick piece of background. When inmates want to be seen by medical or mental health, they are required to put in a request slip. Those request slips can be heartbreaking, they can be hilarious. And the one I'm going to share with you is both. Okay, you should be able to see October 2016. Okay, so I'm going to read this in my best imitation of this inmate's voice because he was a character. And for as many years as I've been a nurse, I can't get people to stop calling me doc or doctor. So this is a literal transcription of his request slip. Dr. Jim, I'm really sorry about the grievance form I wrote 2 or 3 days ago. It wasn't on you, really. Now today I did receive ×2 dinner trays, but when we spoke about my weight loss of what, 40 pounds? I could have sworn you told me you were ordering ×2 meals, every meal for 30 plus days. So that's what I was waiting for. Not your fault that it didn't come when I thought. But can you please redo that order 2 times every meal for 30 plus days? I'm not getting any better, really. Pain throughout. My whole left side, leg, knee, and ankle bruised and infected. Also, I've been having real bad headaches, like maybe 15 hours out of the day. Can I see you after court so we can speak? I should be back from court 10:25, 116, after 12:30. And I don't know what the 10:25, 116 was. Maybe the 10:25 was his court date. Really, and then you have to flip this over because these request slips are about a 4x6 size, so they're not big enough to write a lot on. Dr. Jim, throughout the years, you've really put my frame back together, but now I'm 60 years old. I really think I'm finished. I'm facing 15 plus years right now. I really don't have too much to give, and I have no family. I'm still getting cold because of my high and low blood pressure. I never received the extra blanket from staff. Also, I may be wrong, but didn't you mention insure 2 times a day? I may be wrong. But if you fix the ×2 meals every meal for the next 30 plus day, respectfully, your buddy, I number 10. And what that said to me was that people like him didn't need just anyone, they needed me. And I was overwhelmed at times with the trust that they put in me to take care of their issues. There are a lot of pieces in that that are specific to jail that may not make a lot of sense to the rest of you, but getting double portions for meals is a big deal. Um, you have to have a good reason for it. Getting insure is a big deal. Getting an extra blanket is a big deal. And if there's not something in their custody chart that says an extra blanket has been authorized, when they do cell searches, they will take the extra blanket away. So it gets to be a back and forth between the inmates in custody. And that's kind of how that went. The third story I want to tell you is hilarious, at least in my opinion. I love this story so much. This is when I was doing medical NP, and there are two incidents that are closely related, but 2 years apart. The first one happened after I'd treated a female patient for a rash on her chest. And as I was visiting with another patient in the commons area of the female mod, the patient who'd been treated walked past me. She grabbed the neck of her jail top, pulled it down, nearly exposing her breasts, and enthusiastically said, "Nurse Jim, look!" She was trying to show me that the rash had cleared up, which of course cracked me up. And I asked her what she thought the people around her were thinking while they watched her. She realized what she'd just done and went bright red as she loudly announced to everybody, "I was showing him my rash is gone. That's all." And then we all had a really good laugh. Then 2 years later, I was waiting for someone to show up to sick call, and a male patient walked up to the big glass window of his day room. I had treated him for a fungal infection on his chest that he'd had for like a year and got it cleared up. He grabs his shirt and lifts it clear up to his chin and yells through the window, "Nurse Jim, it went away." So I gave him a thumbs up and laughed really hard because it reminded me of the first experience. So those are just a couple of quick stories from my time in jail. And what I would like to do is any of you who want to unmute and share a story of your own, a story about me, read a poem, do that, because my potluck is getting cold and I'm going to enjoy some of it while you do that. So, volunteer, someone go first.
Can I say something?
Please do.
When you're talking about jail, I'm remembering my friend who is a choir director, and he works with inmates in jails. He does voice and choir with the people there. And it so happened that he was the conductor of the St. Xavier's College, Bombay, where I was studying, and I was part of his choir. Now he's a professor at Boston University, professor of music. But every time and that's why I'm always moved by your stories too, because I remember Andre de Quadras, and I just can't imagine people in jail and what it means when they have someone who cares and cares with kindness. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. I wanted to let you all know I invited you to bring your own potluck, right? So
Yeah.
I'm enjoying some KFC. I have chips and cheese dip. See if I can get it back in the
Hey,
picture here. There we
hey,
are.
Jim, what about the leftovers from last night? I wanted to hear about them, and they sounded so good at Cochinita Pibil.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
so delicious. I finished that at lunchtime. There was no way that was lasting until tonight. I had never heard of this dish before. It's a Yucatan dish
Yeah.
where they take pork shoulder and marinate it with lemon and orange juice, with annatto, which is a spice and coloring that's common to that area. And just the whole thing was just absolutely wonderful. So I may have found a new favorite food.
Jim, I was going to tell you when I saw your post that wasn't kosher, but I figured you knew that already, and that wouldn't have stopped me anyway. It sounded great.
Well, to be perfectly honest, Alan, I'm not very kosher.
Neither am I, but don't tell my rabbi.
I don't know him yet, so you're safe.
I'll read a poem, Jim.
Would you please? Thank you.
Yes. I saw it today, I think on the Poetry Foundation. It's called Job Prescription. And Udi Shockley, I think a lot of you might have seen it. Will poetry change the world? No one asks this about football, the thrill of watching or playing. We get that nurses and doctors are healers. No question that rabbis, priests, and imams guide individuals and groups through spiritual thickets. We don't tell cooks to put down their wooden spoons and go make a real difference instead of a real souffle. Teachers are honored for the learning they impart. So let poets keep on exciting passion in themselves and others. Don't discourage us from our efforts to diagnose the human heart or create trail markers for those coming behind us on this journey. Trust me when I say that poetry heals, guides, feeds, and enlivens. Poetry may not change the world, but might change you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I read it. Yes. Love it.
Thank you. I'm wondering,
James,
any of,
Oh.
go ahead.
if,
Go
if
ahead,
somebody
Jim.
come ahead of me, I don't want to cut off anybody. James, congratulations. I managed to make it back. Didn't want to miss this. Turned out we had a little Christmas party to go to and found out that it was actually ended at 6:15. So here I am. Um, this is a poem talking about farewells and goodbyes. And this is someone that I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to. It was my nephew, Danny, who passed away when he was, oh, 20, 23. He had done some huffing, which is that if you, for computer people seem to know that high intensity spray that you clean your um keyboard with. Well, he apparently you can get a really nice high from that. Well, he got one by accident, and they found him passed away. He was a prisoner in a sense of an oppressive home life. His mother was an addict, which did not help. And he saw something when he was 10 years old that I think traumatized him for life. And I'd like to write, without any further ado, if with your permission, I'd like to read this poem, Nephew, if that's okay.
Please do.
Okay, Nephew. A latchkey kid is not prepared to tread around his robed mom, face a frozen yawn, dead from self-infliction. Better to retrace your childhood steps back through the door to the solid ground of your childhood friends, till the death you could not bear was averted. But back inside again, you found your childhood deserted. Youthful as your years were, they crawled, while a new path to self-infliction cleared. Oh, Danny, dead at 23. What did you see? Of beauty that makes a happiness of strife? Of peace that happiness makes of life? Of love that living cannot touch, when living is too little and too much. Thank you.
I should tell you, Jim, a number of the people who are on here are coworkers who are either psychiatrists or psych nurse practitioners. So
Mhm.
you sharing that, you're talking to a group of people who understand that really well. Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's one of those poems that I could never put in a book because my brother, his father, has a habit of buying my books, and I really don't want him to see this poem. That's why I read it very sparingly. And it's just, it's funny. Some of the poems we write, are really amazing. Well, they're very impressive poems, or they're awe-inspiring, memorable poems, but won't see the light of day. And this is one of them. Other people say, "Well, why don't you?" No, 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 because I don't want my brother to see this. But I share this with you. I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you for doing so. How many of my poet friends, raise my hand here, how many of my poet friends have poems that they have written that they will share on select occasions but will not publish because of friends or family? Yeah. And I think we pretty much do that because we need to record it. We need to work out how we feel about it, what we've learned from it or what we haven't. But it's kind of like a diary or a journal. It's for us, not for someone else, until we decide that the moment's right to share it. Thank you.
Should I mute myself now? Is that how?
I don't care. It's a party. It's not a
Well,
reading.
hey,
Alan?
I wanna say something about Jim's other life, and of course, Jim has other lives and other lives and other lives. As you discover more and more the kinds of things Jim does, aside from uh, playing instruments and playing the organ and playing at church and playing and editing verse virtual and taking photographs and he used to be a kayaker, and I'm sure lots of other things have taken that place. So this is a person who has experienced success in all kinds of fields.
Mm.
And today he's the publisher and editor of Verse Virtual. And how Jim does this every month with such elan and such skill is always amazing to me. And I will tell those of you who are not part of that community, the Verse Virtual community, that Jim rescued Verse Virtual at a time when our publisher and founder Firestone passed away, and he had gotten very sick and was no longer able to keep the publication going. And we needed somebody to step up who was not only a skilled poet, but somebody who had the editing and technical skills to do that. Many of us knew that the only person who was amongst us who could possibly do this was j.Lewis. But we needed for him to step forward, and he very willingly did that. And he saved our publication. And Jim has been doing this now for what, Jim? Are you in your third or fourth year? Is 5. See, that's how easy he makes it look. And he just does an incredible job. And we're hoping if he wants, he'll find his next position as a nurse practitioner
Mm.
because we know he really loves that. But he'll continue to be our publisher and editor because we value him so as
Mm.
a person and as a poet and as an editor and publisher. He really is a remarkable person. And I hope you don't mind that I threw in that little eulogy, Jim,
Mm.
because I did want to make sure that everyone here knew at least about that part of your life.
Mm.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Jim, I have to ask, your occupation, your profession, your career, and your all your experience, I can't believe that you couldn't be not you that you wouldn't be in demand. I mean, this is a tough position you do, and I can't believe that they would be. I'm sure that unless you're not planning to work at a jail anymore, I can't believe that there's somewhere in California that they wouldn't want you to work. I mean, I would think you're in demand. No?
I'm equally convinced that there's a position for me somewhere. I haven't found it yet. It's there. But let me share with you, going back to my leaving um, the hospital where I was working after being injured and going to work in the jail. When I left unexpectedly, was ushered out, told goodbye, I wasn't worried because I'm a person of great faith, and I didn't feel that I would be left hanging. And
Mhm.
so when that letter in the mail came advertising for a job in the juvenile hall that led to my work in the jail, for me, that was very much an answer to faith-filled prayers that said, I do have something I want you to do, and this is it. I would have never on my own even thought of applying to work in a jail. Furthest thing from my mind. And yet it provided me with almost 20 years of some of the most fulfilling and satisfying interactions with patients in terms of personal growth, insight into relationships, faith building. I went into the jail very full of myself. I was going to be that light in the darkness. And as it turned out, there were lots of lights already in the darkness. And I learned a lot from them about myself,
Hmm.
about how faith actually manifests in action. And so it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And I think that's where I am now, unexpectedly out of work, but not anxious or afraid because I know something else is coming. I just don't know at all right now today what that is, but it will come.
I'm
Well,
sure Fred will too.
I'm not poetically inclined, but I just wanted to thank Jim for including us, those of us on been working with him for the last couple of years, to this gathering, and just thank you for your service to our program and our patients, and um, including Katrina, Brandon, and Sadie, who we're also unfortunately losing from our program. Thank you for your spirit and your collegiality over these last couple of years. It's been much appreciated.
Thank you. I know.
Jim, I want to read a poem that I didn't write, um, but I think it has something to do with the occasion. It's a poem that I used to love to teach um, when I spent nearly 50 years as a teacher. And the poem is called Locked In. And it's about being in a prison of one's own making. And many of the kids I taught found themselves there. And Jim is very much a person who is not described in this poem. It's written by a poet named Ingemar Gustafsson, and it was originally written in Swedish. I don't know who the translator is, but I'll read it to you because it's apropos of the work that Jim has done over the years. The poem is called Locked In. All my life, I lived in a coconut. It was cramped and dark, especially in the morning when I had to shave. But what pained me most was that I had no way to get into touch with the outside world. If no one out there happened to find the coconut, if no one cracked it, then I was doomed to live all my life in the nut and maybe even die there. I died in the coconut. A couple of years later, they found the coconut, cracked it, and found me shrunk and crumpled inside. What an accident! If only we had found it earlier, then maybe we could have saved him. Maybe there are more of them locked in like that, whom we might be able to save, they said, and started knocking to pieces every coconut within reach. No use, meaningless, a waste of time. A person who chooses to live in a coconut, such a nut is one in a million. But I have a brother-in-law who lives in an acorn.
Interesting.
Well,
I have
I'll read a poem. I'm working my iPad. For some odd reason, my computer just wouldn't accept the audio, so I don't know whether the audio is okay on this. Can you hear me okay, you guys?
Yes, we
Absolutely.
can.
Okay, fine. This poem is called Tapestry. It's a goodbye poem. It's from my first book. Alan actually wrote the blurb for it very, very kindly, and Jim wrote a blurb for another of my books very kindly. But anyway, this book uses the idea of a tapestry. It sort of reminded me when Jim was talking, telling his stories, how we do weave our life story, and it's kind of like a tapestry, and we don't know what we're going to add to it. And it uses that metaphor in this. It's from a book called Loving Leah, which is about a woman, old woman, like the old King Lear, who had 3 daughters, and this woman has 3 daughters, and she secretly disinherits one. And I write a lot of it from the perspective of the disinherited one, Cordelia. I call her Cordelia, like the character in Shakespeare's play. And this is her final kind of reconciliation to what's happened, and her final goodbye to the mother that she loved and who betrayed her. So here it is. It's called Tapestry. The loom is quiet. Its treadles are still. The shuttles, once filled with sombre, weft spools of darkly shining silk, are almost spent. Silently, I add new shuttles, splice a brighter palette for an open French door, light, zephyr-lifted curtains, transparent silver morning light, rich complexity of sun sparkling on myriad green, and the sense of birdsong. Yes, there must be birdsong. There must be joy. Yet, let me unroll the cloth roller and look at you for one last time as you shuffle along your darkened corridor. It is well before dawn. Those visions of children which so haunt your sleep have woken you again. Your stoop is not just the weight of years, but a heavier load of guilt bearing relentlessly down. Over and over come those terrible words. Whatever will people think of me? Too late for that now. I re-roll the cloth. I have grieved long enough. Through the open door is blue sky, but I will weave through every scene that remains those little bits of glowing silk thread that depict the light of your eyes and the gentleness of your smile. I must also take one thread of dark, somber silk, a sadly powerful reminder of the tragedy and folly that comes when independence is surrendered, when strength of body wanes and the diminished spirit grows vulnerable and weak. I rearrange the shuttles with spools of shining blues, greens, and splashes of gold and vermilion. I put my foot to the treadle. With a clatter, the parts move. Warp, thread absorbs weft, and the tapestry moves on. Let all your years of goodness outweigh those final spools of silent, secret surrender. Now take your peace. Dream no more. Wring your hands no more. Rest quietly. Sleep easily. I carry you in my heart, even as I let you go, and with you all the grief and sorrow of your last days. I love you, always. But now, dear one, I say goodbye. 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 Goodbye.
Thank you. I have a couple of goodbye poems to share too. So, here we go. The first poem was written in response to a Facebook post by a childhood school friend who still lives in my hometown, our hometown. And it was just such a lovely picture of the red rocks in New Mexico and the snow on them. And this was what I wrote in response to that photo, and I called it, If I Had Stayed. You posted another photo today of snow and Red Rock Hills. It might have been from south of town. I couldn't really say, but I imagined the paths through the icy white powder as being yours, and maybe those of another friend whose face has grown old like mine, old and hard and wintry. You seem so content in a place I couldn't wait to leave, happy to be there, pleased with your choice to linger. It was home, it was mine, but it was never enough. I replay faulty memories from half a century ago, all of them tinged with various shades of loss, of love that sputtered and died in the high desert winds. I contemplate this latest scene and wonder, as I sometimes do, who I would be today if I had stayed. And this second poem, provided I can find the right tab to open it, was actually written for my next younger brother, with whom I shared a summer of adventure. We worked helping construct a chapel about an hour away from where we lived, and we were driving a little Volkswagen Bug, and we were young, we were both teenagers, and we had about as much sense as teenagers do when driving on a 2-lane road in the countryside of New Mexico between Zuni and Gallup. And on one particular occasion, he was going really fast, and we came up to a curve that I didn't believe our car or we would survive. But that was the background for something that came much later, and this poem is called Goodbye Sounds Like. When you are the passenger, no dash mount panic handle, car and driver taking the corner hard, hearing tires complain in their own peculiar voice, shouting goodbye to pavement soon to be abandoned. Stomach tightens, and a frightened gasp betrays you to the one who grips your heart hard like the steering wheel, and then, to emphasize the ride is over, raises both hands and lets you go. The screeching, screaming warning of impending separation takes so very long to fade away. Different kind of goodbye. We don't always get to say goodbye the way we would like to. So, anyone else would like to jump in and talk and party and say something? I am open.
I have a few.
Please do.
Okay, I have a farewell poem. This is called Traversing the Night. Through this gathering dusk I traverse, the mountains darkening, the clouds in heaps of grays, colors of sunset lost to the twilight, chickens already roosted in a tree behind a raw adobe home, a window golden with light within. I am slipping away in the coming night, leaving behind that village, its clouds swirling around peaks through valleys, around ancient silent ruins. A silence within, no tears, no farewells, only the golden light of these words bubbling, welling. And into the completed night I traverse, my road overhung with rock bluffs, fracturing beneath jungle, beneath bromeliads, beneath orchids, beneath the tangled tendrils of some vine swaying in the chill.
I don't know if you can see us, but we're clapping for you.
Thank you.
You know, I wanted to say that I think it was Alan who read the poem Coconut.
Yes.
Yes, and he was talking about teaching, and I've had a long career in teaching, and I'm not saying it that the jail is a metaphor for the classroom by any means, but what I'm really saying is that there are so many students. You're not simply delivering material, whatever you're teaching, English, French, Spanish, whatever it is, but so many students come to you with their personal challenges, difficulties, problems. And so many years later, even after I've retired, I get messages from students. You don't even sometimes know what you've done for them or what you mean to them. So this is what I was thinking when he was reading the poem Coconut. And I loved that last line. I mean, I was just absolutely moved by the image of the acorn, you know, at the end, ironic as it may seem. So I'm now, you know, getting some of the images, faces of some of my students as I mention this point. So thanks to Alan, I really, really loved that poem, and I took down the name of it.
I'll send it to you, Kavita.
Yes, please do, Alan. We're always sending each other stuff, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll send you a copy of the,
yes,
please. Of the poem.
Love it.
And I'll post it on my Facebook page so that anyone who wants to see it, which is open to the public, so anyone who wants to see it will be able to find it there.
Yeah, and then about you know, Jim being so talented. I don't know if anyone can hear me. There's something else going on there, but yeah, you can. Yeah, but you know, every time my husband has a desk in the same room as I do, so every time Jim's on or Jim has a poem or Jim says something, then I say, oh, Alan, you know, Jim, this is Alan Mendonca, not Alan Wolowitz. I say, you know, Jim said this, or Jim wrote this line, or Jim, and Alan said, such a talented man. That's what he repeats every time. So I can put 2 exclamation marks after that. I just wanted to share because I'm so grateful to be on this particular platform, and bless the person who introduced me to it. Every time I get an issue at the end of a month, I put everything aside. I forget what I'm supposed to be doing, and then I'm just reading all those wonderful poems. So thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Jim, is my microphone working right now?
It is.
Yeah.
Hi, Dan.
Is it coming through? Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Dan. I met Jim on my first day at work at WellPath during orientation. I have only been to one poetry reading once before in my life, and I only went because Jim was hosting it. And I felt oddly comfortable with myself there. I mean, I didn't read any poetry. It's not my thing, but I felt oddly comfortable because Jim made it happen. Jim and I have something oddly in common, or oddly uncommon, but common amongst us in the convexity of the Venn diagram of computer tech nerds and mental health clinician people. There's a very small slither where Jim and I both live. And I think when you add in, Jim and I followed each other on YouTube very early because he shared his poetry and I also make things. And Jim, I'm not going to use past tense or has been wonderful. It is wonderful knowing you, and I know we'll stay in touch because it's rare to see somebody who can have the hyper analytic, almost sterile computer approach to things and this incredibly empathetic approach to people and their suffering that kind of defies logical constraints and algorithms. And then throw in like the compulsion to create. And I think you and I in some ways are wildly different, but in the ways that I felt comfortable with you, it's been really nice. And the irony is I get to say I was your supervisor, right? Is that the official word? I get to say I was your supervisor. Yeah, like the biggest stolen valor I could ever claim. Being Jim's supervisor was like the most easy, wonderful thing in the world, because not only did you know what to do, if you weren't 100% certain, you'd present things as kind of a sanity check in an email, and I'd read it and be like, yeah, this seems thoughtful. This seems thoughtful. You thought through this. I'm not sure about this. And felt totally comfortable saying, I don't know, I'd look this up, but you could look this up. And there was no supervision. It was just purely sanity check. And I really respect your clinical acumen, how much you care about people, your understanding of how computers work, and you can probably write assembly for all I know, and your compulsion to create and share it. And it means a lot to me. And I look forward to staying in touch in some mechanism.
Amen. I put 3 things in the chat. One is my email address for anyone who would like to stay in touch that way. The second is my personal website where you can find poetry, photography, graphic art, music, pretty much me. And the last one is my Facebook page, because I'm frequently on there checking and staying in touch with different people. So those are ways that you can stay in touch with me after we say goodbye today.
I have a poem.
Oh, please.
This is Norma.
Hi, Norma. I see you down there in the corner of my screen.
Oh, good. You can see me. I'm not much to look at. I'm in my 90s. I wrote a few poems a few years ago. When I was 80, I started publishing books. I have 5 on Amazon, but I did write a goodbye poem. I've had a lot of goodbyes in my life, and it's just short. Would you like to hear it?
I would love to hear it.
Because I love your poetry, Jim. You have such a gift. You astound me. That's why I follow you on Facebook. But this is my one poem, very short. Goodbyes. A goodbye waits at the edge of each bright hope. Then with sweet and awful tearing, rips what is from what will be.
Wow, that was short and pointed. Thank you.
I've said a lot of goodbyes in 93 years.
Yeah, I would think.
To places I've lived, friends I've known. So I didn't need any more words than that.
Yeah, I think of all of the places that I have worked from the time I was 10 years old until now. And the things that I remember are always the people I worked with. Almost never, oh, I remember I worked for this really great company or I worked for this really great project. It was the people that I worked with that I miss the most. And I would dare say that's probably true for most of us as we move from one employment or one situation to another where regardless of our intentions, we know that there's going to be some distance from the people that we are used to. So I'm going to give you one more minute if anyone would like to jump in and share anything. And if not, I'm going to share a final poem.
Quick, somebody jump in.
Good
Just
job,
kidding.
Jim.
Just kidding.
Well, let me just say thank you and thank you again to all of you for showing up. I had no idea how many people would actually join. I've never done one of these before, throwing my own goodbye party. The potluck was great. I got to tell you, I had cashew brittle seeds, chocolates, a crescent roll that's a special recipe my wife developed that has a filling of almond paste and chocolate chips and a glaze with orange in it. They're just absolutely wonderful, and it's a Christmas tradition. I had Kentucky Fried Chicken, which I like, don't eat very often, and my tortilla chips and cheese dip and my soda. It was a great potluck. Sorry you couldn't be here to taste it with me. However,
Let's hear your poem, Jim.
here it comes. This is also a very short goodbye poem called Before I Go. Every line must end correctly here. Every verb be in a perfect tense. It's been so long since I last read your voice. And if I had my way, my simple choice would be to trim the distance too immense between us, make you miles and miles more near. And then, come autumn wind or winter snow, I'd see you wave and smile before I go.
Bravo.
So thank you. I will probably, within the next day or so, post this up on my personal YouTube channel and put a link on Facebook so that those who expressed an interest in coming but had things come up and couldn't be here will have a chance to enjoy the friendship and the poetry and the stories. It's been a good run. Thank you all. Bye.
You take care, Jim.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
God bless.
Bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
luck.
Take care, everyone.
Safe journeys, Jim.
Thanks.
Yep, it's over.